Welcome back to another episode of Artist to Artist presented by Artist Republic. I'm Nick. That's Christian. That's the only time this intro ever makes sense because we're next to each other. Now, please remember, give us a 5-star rating. I'm kidding. You don't have to, but it'd be nice. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Comment on YouTube, like on YouTube, share it with your friends, your mom's dog walkers, sisters, uncles, cousins, babies, whoever. Let's get out there. Now, with that, speaking of getting out there, Christian, what is getting out there on the news today?
So this is interesting. The music industry's leading trade organizations, as quoted, have collectively slammed Twitter and Jack Dorsey for not taking down copyrighted material fast enough. I guess there's been an issue lately with Twitter and copyrighted music content, and it looks like Twitter has been dragging their feet on striking that down. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that just got more interesting, especially because Twitter just bought Tidal. Now Twitter owns their own streaming network. Well, Jack Dorsey does through Square, but yes. So they own Tidal now. So that's interesting. The second piece about that, though, goes back to a lot of conversations I've had with artists, which actually say, don't copyright your music when you're an independent artist. Don't put the copyright claims on your music because you want people to be able to share your music without getting copyright claims, because there is something to be said about, as an artist, just getting out there and then making the money later once you establish your fan base. So I'm kind of bipartisan on it. I think there is something to be said about, yes, you don't want people ripping off your music, but at the same time, music is meant to be shared, and you're never going to grow your fan base if you don't let people share your music. And so I think it's kind of 50-50. I'm really 50-50 on it, which is you don't want people ripping off your music, but you also don't want to stop people from sharing your music. That's what I'm going to say on it.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting thing to mention. I agree with you. I think you've actually changed my opinion by saying that. So that's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and kick it off with our next guest.
I'm glad I changed your opinion. I'm so glad. With that, yes, let's bring in Sarah Beth Perry. She is probably one of the most awesome people I met. We had her on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago. Once again, if you want to find out about Clubhouse events, go to blog.artistrepublic.com/Clubhouse, upcoming Clubhouse, something. We'll put the link in the description. If you want to hop on Clubhouse event, we have one place where you can find all the best music industry Clubhouse events. It's pretty sick. Check it out. Also check out Indie Revolution on Clubhouse for more live events from us. So yes, Sarah Beth Perry is the founder and CEO of With the Band, a fan engagement platform where fans, artists feel a part of something bigger than themselves through a fan community. Sarah has grown with the band from an idea in her dorm room to captivating arenas with fan engagement activations for artists like the Jonas Brothers, Kacey and Kacey Musgraves. After being a fangirl herself, she realized there was an opportunity to create a better relationship between an artist and their fans. She has created fan activations with over 37,000 fans, creating both the Jonas Brothers and Kacey Musgraves fan projects, being ranked #1 as the best fan project on Google. Her and her team are also getting ready to launch a new platform that provides turnkey solutions for artists to manage and monetize their fan base through Fan Crew, their modern day version of a fan club. So with that, let's bring her in and let's dive in more.
Let's get this started, Sarah. Great to meet you. I love to start these things off by just giving our audience kind of an idea of who you are and what you do. So if you just want to break it down for us, that'd be great.
Yeah, totally. So thanks for having me. My name is Sarah Beth Perry, and I'm the founder and CEO of With the Band. And really kind of my backstory was I grew up in Nashville, knew I always wanted to do music. And then as I got older, my sister and I became the typical fangirls of the classic boy bands, went to all the shows, stood out in the lines. Really remember you're seeing these groups of fans congregate and the artist teams weren't involved. And I really felt like that was kind of a missed opportunity. And then didn't really think much of it until I went to Belmont University, double majored in music business and entrepreneurship. And then through that, actually, learned that there's more jobs in the music industry than just, an artist and a label, and really realized that, someone had to be doing something with fan engagement. And that is exactly what I wanted to do. And so I actually went out Googling and searching for this dream company that I wanted to work for, and I could not find it anywhere. And so that was really kind of what has brought me up to this point of starting with the band, which is, what I'm doing now. And really where we started at With the Band is completely different than where we are, in 2021. But initially we had an app that enabled fans and artists to create and participate in these fan projects and fan meetups. And then we started partnering with artists to create these huge fan activations. Obviously COVID hit, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that later, but now we've transitioned to a brand new platform that we're about to launch that really enables an artist to better manage and own their fan base.
Awesome. I love that. And, we did like a little brief intro on With the Band. And you kind of touched on it really briefly, but I would love to hear a little bit more about it, kind of expand on, what that is and how it works for the fans.
Yeah, totally. So I can say initially what we had was both an Apple Android app where any fan could get on, create an account, and they could create or join a fan project or fan meetup all over the world. And so that's how it kind of initially started. And fans were creating these projects. And then it's kind of interesting. I didn't mean to start working with artists as soon as we did. I initially, when we were launching, I've completely bootstrapped the company. And so we basically listed out 10 different marketing tactics and thought, well, let's put a little money at each of them. And then whatever works, we'll spend more money there. And one of those tactics happened to be the first really big fan activation we put on at the Jonas Brothers show. And that one just went way better than we ever expected. And it ended up getting the attention of all the other artists we then worked with thereafter. But what we did for that one is we got together a group of fans, printed out 16,000 signs that said, "Thank you for coming back to us." And then the Jonas Brothers just came out with their reunion album. That was their reunion tour. And then they had a song called Comeback. And so on the back of the sign, it had instructions for the fan to hold it up during the song Comeback. And just went way better than we ever expected. All the guys are crying on stage, half the arena was crying, and ended up getting written up by a bunch of major press outlets. And then from that got the attention of Kacey Musgraves. And then we ended up partnering with her, and we created a rainbow during the song Rainbow at her sold out Nashville show. And so depending on where the fan was sitting, they had a different color sign that had Kacey's logo on it and had instructions on the back for the fan to actually hold it up to their phone flashlight. So it created this glowing sea of rainbow lights. And so that was kind of the initial start of With the Band.
That's so cool. So you're kind of, in a way, taking the idea of a concert and flipping it on its head. You're giving the artist a show at that point. They get to see what you're doing for them. And I think that's, in a way, it's beautiful. I love the concept behind it. For you personally, I know you said that you grew up as a fangirl. What was it like for you doing something like that at a Jonas Brothers concert and seeing their reactions to what you put together?
Yeah, it was definitely overwhelming for sure, because being real, the first band or the first artist in general I remember loving were the Jonas Brothers. And so that was such a full circle moment for me. At the time I was not that big of a fan, but it was just, thinking, oh, I know their fan base well. I hope this will work. And so in that moment when everything was happening, we were so anxious beforehand, hoping just a few hundred people will hold it up. That's all we were hoping for. And then when it started happening and just seeing this sea of white signs, I was bawling, crying, and we could even hear my best friend, who's now a coworker at With the Band. She always talks about there's this kid behind us, and he was like, "Mom, why the heck are these girls crying?" And we were just sobbing, because it really, I've never felt a moment more in my life than in that moment of, this is what I meant to do, 100% hands down, because it was so cool of it was such a learning experience too, of how much ownership the fans then had Chapter, and looking on social media, and Nick Jonas, of course, posted about it, but then looking at all the fans post and seeing like their comments saying, I'm so honored I got to be part of this show. Like, this was my favorite show. This is the first show I've taken my daughter to, and I'm so glad it was this one. This was the part she was most excited about during the show. And it really brought in this ownership from the fan that I've never seen before at a show, which was super cool.
Yeah, and I think that's like a good point because, you know, fan engagement is a massive piece of content that I don't think has really ever been embraced that much.
Yeah.
And especially when it's embraced from the artist, it really makes an impact. Like the first concert that I think I ever had strong fan engagement at was I went to Zed at Red Rocks in Colorado. Probably alone just one of the sickest concerts I've ever been to. But when you walked in, everyone had a colored band. And so obviously during the entire Zed's, you know, concert, all of our bands were basically lighting up to match the, you know, lights on the stage. And when you saw that and you felt that, like everyone was Snapchatting that, everyone was taking pictures of that, Zed's posting pictures of it. And it's just like, it's so cool that it creates a new type of experience. And it creates an engaging experience. And it's almost like, you know, it almost goes back into traditional sales, not to get boring, but, you know, I always see those ads for Masterclass all the time. And, you know, there's this one sales one that you know, Masterclass keeps trying to sell me on. And, you know, the snippet of it is this guy saying, you know, the last impression is your lasting impression. And all these fan engagements are usually during the headliner, which is the last thing before the end of the show. And those impressions of that concert is what you're going to leave with. You're not, you know, usually going to leave with like, oh, this is how the show opened. You're going to leave with like, this is how the show ended. Like, this crazy thing happened. And so that's definitely cool. So let's dive into kind of the second piece now, which is working on, you know, your new platform and going with that. What's kind of the big difference between your new platform and with the band? You know, kind of the difference, similarities. What do you see going with that? And stuff of that sort.
Yeah, totally. So kind of what started us thinking about this new piece of software technology that we wanted to build was at the beginning when COVID hit in, you know, April, March, I had some different managers reach out just being like, hey, Sarah, what do we do besides Instagram Live? And so that kind of sent me down a hole of looking at all the different platforms, tools, strategies that people were using, and how could I help these artists do something that was unique and different and helped, you know, serve them, whether that was like an album launch or like, for instance, the Jonas Brothers did like a documentary launch. So basically I just started researching, and it was through this that I realized how few tools actually existed out there. And so what I really saw after looking at all the different platforms for smaller level artists, I felt like there were a good amount of tools and resources out there to help them. So when talking about managing and monetizing your fan base, you're talking about like Patreon, Memberful. And then we were seeing these medium to larger size artists. They had a newsletter or they had a completely customized app. And that was pretty much it on figuring out how to manage and monetize their fan base. And so what we realized was, let's make something that's zero startup cost. So it's, you know, not as expensive as creating an app, but just as customizable. And so we figured out that this would enable artists to create their own fan crew, which is what we call our modern day version of a fan club. And so think of the exact business model of Patreon, but for the talent level of Masterclass. And so we're working with these medium to larger level artists to figure out what benefits they want to offer their fans, what pricing, what is the look and feel. They can change everything. And so it's both web and app based. And the biggest portion of this, when doing all the research, I realized was the artist rarely gets to own data. And that was the number one thing that I felt like was really missing for these artists. Even if you look at kind of the substitutes right now of community with texting the phone numbers, the artist actually doesn't own any contact information. So and you're paying money to use that, a quite substantial amount. And so we really wanted to make sure that the artist actually gets to see the email address of the fan. If they ever leave the platform, they get to take that information with them, because we do believe it is their fan base. It's not the technology's fan base. And so they should be able to own that information.
And that's actually something that came up in our last podcast that we actually just recorded. which is, traditionally artists don't own anything. Like when they have followers on Spotify, they literally have no way of reaching them. And, it's hard. Like imagine running a business that you couldn't send an email blast. Like it's nuts. And so I definitely think that's highly needed. So obviously live shows, you talked a little bit about COVID. I think so many people have talked about COVID, how it impacted the music industry, but all that stuff. So my outlook is gonna be a little more happy, which is how do you see fan crew breaking into the market after COVID with live shows coming back?
Yeah, totally. So what kind of the strategy that we saw as is let's build out the best digital tool possible right now. And then once live comes back, we'll add in those live features that we have already been doing, but also new ones. So we definitely plan to, eventually then integrate with the live shows again to create these big fan activations. And it's just going to be, amplified even more when you actually have a bigger group of fans, of that artist on the platform. And so we definitely see like we'll be in that live space too. And when creating this, we never thought like, oh, this would only work during COVID. Because even when starting the company, so I started this while I was in school thinking about this idea when I realized there was nothing out there. And that was kind of always my end goal of the company is I wanted to create this modern day version of a fan club. Because when I was younger, like I was a part of the Jonas Brothers fan club. And then you really saw as social media came, all the fan clubs dissipated. But then when we were doing our research with fans, one of the biggest things they asked for was community, which is super interesting that fans felt social media actually diminished that because there was no longer this kind of meeting hub of you hear about these girls who met like on the Jonas Brothers forum page and were roommates in college. And so that doesn't really exist much anymore. And so that's what I really wanted to bring back was how can I help other fans today really make friends with other fans in their communities.
And I definitely like that. I mean, I can definitely speak for myself on that, which is, I have like 3 friends that we literally all like the same artists. And like every time they release an album, like we're up at midnight listening.
Totally.
And, so, but there really isn't like, I can't find other people that listen to that same artist.
Yeah.
Just have to be totally. Like, you do like it. Okay, cool.
Well, even thinking like on my Instagram followers, like there's still people I follow that I met in line like 10 years ago at a 21 Pilots show or whatever. It's, these kind of friendships last forever, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, I agree with that, 10,000%. But with that though, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hit you with what we call the lightning round. Lightning round is a bunch of random questions that we have found on the internet that we are going to ask, and you pretty much just have to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Sounds good.
Totally random, doesn't, can be about anything. My first question is, do you think that aliens exist?
Yes.
Yes. Simple
There's
to the
no
point.
way.
There's no way. I mean, if we live in a universe as big as they say it is, we can't be the only ones. Am I right?
Totally.
Especially
I think
if
the
we
thing
exist.
too. Yeah. Well, the thing too is like I find it so hard to believe of like you think of even like vampires or mermaids, like how did someone come up with that without first seeing it? That's the thing that I always come back to.
That's a really good point. Maybe vampires do exist. Where the Collins at? Okay, cool. So my lightning round question for you is if you could go back to any period in time and live out the rest of your life there, what would it be?
Ooh. That's a good question. I feel like I'm honestly pretty content with where I am right now in this timeline, but I feel like the end of the 20s, like that would have been amazing to go to like the roaring 20s parties. But the exciting thing is I feel like, we're going to have those again at the end of COVID. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Okay. That is my theory that I've had for the last year is
Yeah.
once all of this is over, like the Roaring Twenties is coming back.
Oh, 100%. Like, can you imagine? It's just going to be show after show. Everyone's going to be doing everything.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm so ready for it.
Oh yeah.
I was actually, to be honest, pretty upset about that though. I wish like COVID happened in like 2019, because then like we could have actually had the Roaring Twenties in the first year of the 20s. Because like even all me and my friends were like joking about it like before in the end of 2019. We're like, yo, we should just get like 100 people, rent out like one of the Newport mansions up here because no one touches them in the winter, and we're like, just host a Gatsby party because it's technically the 20s. But I guess technically it still is the 20s. But I'm with you on that. You know, Roaring 20s is going to be a thing again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What would be the cutest animal if it was scaled down to the size of a cat?
Such an interesting question. I think maybe like an elephant. Like that would be really cute.
I was thinking
that too. We're all on the same page here. That's
Yeah.
cool.
That'd be really adorable.
All right, I've got one more for you. And that is, if you could have dinner with two people, dead or alive, who would they be?
Ooh, that's such a good one. These are all like things I really haven't thought that much about. There's so many people I don't know even who to choose from. Because it's like, do you want to like almost find out the tea on things? Like trying to figure out like Princess Diana's death. Like, could you try to figure that out?
Yeah, they're reborn just for this moment.
Yeah. I feel like Dolly Parton also like would be up there. That would be a pretty cool one. It's so hard. Only two people. Oh, that's a really hard question. I think the hard thing is too, and this is probably like a little Debbie Downer, but after working with artists, like I don't want to meet some of my favorite artists because a lot of times they disappoint. And so I kind of take most artists off the table.
That's fair. I was muted. Anyways, Nick, do you have any more? Or do you want to push back into the combo?
I do have one last question. But I do agree on the artist point. Like, it's like when you meet an artist, like you're just like, oh, he's a person, like they're a person. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You have that minute of like fangirling, and then you're just like, all right, they're a person.
Totally. Yeah. Especially too, if you're like working with them and something, you know, there's egos involved. So sometimes it's not always the best situation.
Okay. So here's my last question. If you, oh wait, no, I read that wrong and I don't like that question as much. Okay. What is the most epic way you've ever seen someone quit or be fired?
Oh. You know, I just have a lot of bad stories. I don't think there's any good ones that I know of. Being real, I'm pretty young in the workforce, so I don't think I've seen that many. But
I get that.
Yeah.
I
don't think I've really seen an epic one.
I was gonna say that's a fun tidbit. I actually my job in high school, which was probably one of the last jobs I ever worked in my life. I quit one day because it was a store called West Marine, like boat store, and the new people that like came in management were actually like serious. All the other people were just like, it was a joke. Like I drove a forklift once. Like it was a joke. And one day I was like, you know what? I was hosting concerts at the time. I was like, I think I'm hosting concerts. I'm done with this place. I printed off my 2 weeks notice on their computer in the printer in West Marine, and then handed it to them. And I was like, I'm out. That was definitely one of my favorite moments. In fact, I printed it off there.
You should have printed it off on a event flyer, and then put I'm quitting at the very top of it. Come to my show.
Yeah.
I'm quitting. Come to my concert next weekend. All right. So diving back into the fun topic of music and music tech, all this fun stuff. where do you see the future of fan engagement in terms of music technology? Because obviously that is something that has, besides for really you guys, hasn't been touched a lot. So
Totally.
where do you see the market, whether it's with what you guys are doing, whether it's other companies starting to come out, where do you see the market going?
Yeah, I'm honestly really excited for fan engagement because I feel like people are just starting to notice it. And even, thinking about meetings I've had, I think more people now, since COVID has happened, are a little more aware of it. But before, I could be talking to like a VP of a label, they'd have no idea what a fan project is or that fans do fan meetups. They were pretty they're so isolated from the fans that they didn't know what the fans wanted. I think people are becoming more aware that they do need to pay attention to the fans. And so I really think this is just the beginning and it's about to explode. And it was interesting too. I believe this was on our Clubhouse chat that someone said this, and it made me think, and I keep thinking about it. It's so true of the music industry in itself. You think about any kind of other entertainment, they do a lot of monetization. The music industry now, you could be a fan and never pay for anything. Like you could be a fan and just have a free Spotify subscription, listen to all the music. You can consume social media, watch YouTube videos, and you would not have to pay a dime. And to me, that's just like bad business. Like you have to start thinking from an artist perspective as if you're a business and not as if you're an artist, or else I feel like you're completely losing track of what you're doing. Obviously, I do think like the art and the craft comes first, but if you're not trying to think from a business mind of how to promote that and how to get that out there, then I think you're, doing it wrong, or you should just not have a career, but you should just do it on the side. And so I think you're going to see a lot more monetization, whether that's exclusive content or people just trying to get creative, especially when you can't really do in-person things right now of doing these live streams. I think those will, stay pretty relevant and be able to, if it's a MSG show, they can now live stream it to a fan in Australia can watch it. And it's been interesting too. We have this like IGTV series where we interview fans behind huge fan accounts, and most of them are usually not in the US. And I never realized how few times they actually get to see their favorite artist just because they come nowhere near there. And so, and all of them have traveled already to multiple countries to see their favorite artists, but they'll only come, once or twice in the last like 5 years to Europe. And so I think you're just really going to see a lot of more monetization in the next few years.
So here's my question on that, because I think, the music industry in terms of revenue and money generated would be very different if the only way to get music was through iTunes. And iTunes never went away, because then you're actually buying a song and you're buying an album and you're buying that stuff. But here's now the second part of that, which playing devil's advocate here.
Totally.
It'd be if NF's album dropped today when we're recording this. Yes, I would have paid $14.99 to buy that album. But my buddy, who's an independent artist from, home, if he dropped an album and it was the same price, I probably wouldn't have bought it. I probably just would have been like, oh, this is good. And maybe I would have bought it. But now that I don't have to have any upfront cost on my Spotify account because I'm already paying for it, I'm now able to just add a song to my playlist. I'm like, hey, I like your song. I'll add it to my playlist. So do you think there's actually an increase in monetization through direct, purchasing of art, that it actually could add a higher barrier of entry for artists trying to get in to the scene?
Yeah, I don't think it's one or the other. I think you should always be doing both. It's kind of like social media, like with this new fan group platform. I'm not telling you get off of Instagram and TikTok. I'm saying this is a thing you should add in. You always need to have those free channels open. It's brand awareness. And so they're just two different, like, I see them as two different branches of your business, as you can do this brand awareness stuff, but then you also need to monetize. So I totally agree with you. I wouldn't have bought a smaller artist or someone I didn't know's album. But if I listen to it, on Spotify, well, then I'm going to be more likely to then follow them on a social media channel and then probably purchase a ticket to their show or, VIP or whatever. And I just see it more as a funnel.
It's kind of like, exactly. Funnel. Yes, exactly. And that's definitely a good point, because truly, artists would make a lot more money if
Oh
iTunes
yeah.
was still a thing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not. And also that's why I like with what SoundCloud came out with, which is actually an idea that my buddy had years ago. And I'm kind of mad at him. He never pursued it, which was actually paying an artist directly based on the percentage of streams that a user streamed instead of the amount of all users. So, Spotify is like, hey, for people listening that don't know, the way Spotify pays you is, if they make $20 million in a quarter, and of that 10 million of it goes to royalties. And of that 10 million, if you only had 1% of the total amount of streams in that quarter, you only get 1% of that $10 million. Now, the new model that's starting to come out, which I think SoundCloud is the first one that's adopting it, and I think it should be, which is your $9.99 a month you pay for Spotify, the percentage of your streams are your subscription is paid out to the artist based on your percentage of streams.
Yeah.
So if you stream one artist specifically, they're getting the majority of your subscription per month. Because now independent artists, I may stream an independent artist 10 times a month, and he may be my most, well, not 10 times, but yeah, he may be my most streamed person. But for the rest of the world, he may not be. So he's making little less amount of money. So yes, I'm with you on monetization. But with that, I saw your microphone on mute, so I'm passing off to you.
It's all good. Cool. So I kind of want to bring it back a little bit to the whole fan crew topic. I'm really interested in what you're doing with that. And, part of the conversation that we had, you mentioned, you're bringing it back to the fan clubs of days gone. And, again, another thing that you said in that conversation was at some point in history, two people met up at a fan club and they ended up becoming best friends and listening. And then Nick mentioned listening to new albums together and things like that. For fan crew, are there any plans for virtual integrations of, something like Netflix Party where like people can listen to something at the same time on the same platform? Or what are some innovations that you're doing with fan crew on that level?
Yeah, totally. So we have honestly implemented a lot of things and have a lot of the rest on our roadmap. And so we definitely, our biggest value when building out this platform was how do we create more community. And so since we, have it, we're about to launch it, but over the past, 6-8 months now, we have been doing things kind of like that to start just getting the buzz about it going. And like it was the 10th anniversary of One Direction this summer, and we did a big like 1D fan meetup trivia night, which was super cool because then it's like a Zoom hangout with people in Australia and Portugal and the Philippines, and it was fans from all over, which was really cool. But yeah, in the future, right now we have both a Zoom and YouTube Live API integration that the artist can use, and so they can really get super creative on whether they want to do like a super high tier private hangout with, like 10 fans a month, or they could decide to do a complete live stream, or there's really just so many different creative ways. Whatever you think that you can do, you probably can do it on there. And so we're definitely going to be working in more ways too that fans could do a watch party. They kind of already can with a live stream, or even one of the main reasons we built out a YouTube API is because some different labels asked that they would want to premiere a music video early in the fan crew, but then if you use the YouTube API, it actually starts wrapping up the streams before the video even comes out. Just put it unlisted and then eventually make it public. And so we definitely do have plans to do as much community creating as possible.
That's great. And that's kind of a perfect segue into my next question, where the applications of your products for the artists, right?
Yeah.
Of course, this is a very fan heavy experience, but we want to kind of angle this towards the artists as well. On your end, what are some of the ways that artists can use fan crew when it launches? And this is really for the people that are listening, especially the ones that are interested. Yeah,
totally. So the way that we usually kind of set up a fan crew is we definitely talk with the artist and their team and figure out first, what are their priorities? So is that they only are really big artists and only have 5 minutes a month to work on this, or do they want super high monetization? And then we work backwards from those priorities to then figure out, okay, well then what benefits can we offer with those limitations? And then we work on pricing. And so it gives you the flexibility from the artist side of, you can post everything from photos, videos, you can do polls of like voting on your next album artwork. You can also host the live streams, and you can geo-target posts to send posts, just to fans in one city. And so you can get super creative too, of even using your fans almost like a street team and having them help promote your music. So there's pretty much an endless amount of ways that you can really use this, not only to make money, own your fans' data, but actually to use your fans as a promotional tool.
Sounds extremely robust and much more expansive than my initial thoughts on it when you were talking about it. That's really cool. So my last question before I pass it off to Nick, and again, this is going to be for the artists, but if someone is interested, how can they get involved?
Yeah, totally. So if you go to our website, withtheband.co, has all the information on fan crews and has a little form you can fill out, and we'll message you back to start talking more about you starting your own fan crew.
Hell yeah, that sounds awesome. So with that, Sarah, that was awesome having you on. I will definitely be checking out more about fan crews. Hopefully there will be a fan crew for NF that I can all, hang out with my boys, because right now it's just me and Christian and like a couple friends from home. But you know what? Maybe we'll get out there. With that, yes, thank you so much for hopping on. And that was another awesome episode of Artist to Artist presented by Artist Republik. If you liked it, don't forget to check any of the links below. We'll be having Clubhouse links to With the Band and all this stuff. And also send to friends, anybody that you think would be interested, 5-star reviews, really anything. And maybe if you give us a 5-star review, Christian will make a fan club for you. He will be the one-person fan club for anybody that gives a 5-star review. So with that, we are out.